Welcome back to GTD. Another fun-filled week, fun-filled episode for you all. Micah, I can't help but notice our shirts are kind of matching, and we're also
Yeah.
kind of matching my wall. And you're like the king of matching hats with the fits. I don't really do all that, but even the hat, even the bolt on the hat's the same color this time. So A plus, you matching everything.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the intent. Got to show up looking the absolute best. That's why I chose the Adidas hoodie and the Chargers hat. We're definitely caring about that a lot right now.
Oh yeah, the most I don't know, spared out, scattered man in sports. You know, Florida fan, Charger fan, Phoenix Suns fan. I mean, all over the place, aren't we?
Yeah.
But anyways, let's get right into it with MLB. We started with racing last week, but we're gonna go back to MLB this week. Just we've got a little bit more to talk about. So we'll start as always with the Bat Flip of the week, and this one I think is one of the better ones we've seen for its innovation and its difference. It's something he's done, and I think this is gonna be the next thing to kind of sweep the whole celebration game nation, if you will.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It looked really good. The first time I saw the video, I was like, man, I wish he would have done that with the Reds, and that might give it away. But we are talking about Nick Castellanos this week.
Yes. Yes, we are. So I have batting gloves somewhere in my house, but I never wore Evo shields or anything, especially since I was a PO, when those became more prominent. But if you
You
haven't
didn't wear
seen
Evo
it,
shields while pitching? Come on,
I
what are you
should have, dude.
doing?
I should have double elbowed the Evo shields on the pitching. Or the sliding mitt, having a sliding mitt,
Yeah.
like a ball come out of it. That would have been nuts. But anyways, he hits a home run, and everyone knows it's gone. Like, it's a no-doubter. And then he just admires it, and before he even starts taking first base, it's like a walk. He just starts unstrapping, batting gloves, Evo shield, ankle guard, the whole nine. And just drops it, and then he goes. And it's just new. We haven't seen it before. So excellent. A plus Nick Castellanos, who we knew was going to be on this list at some point this year. We just
Yeah.
thought it'd be after. I thought like a terrorist attack would happen, and then he would like get on the list.
Well, he did hit a
Uh,
homer right after Willie Mays died, literally 2 hours
that he
later to walk off the
that he did.
game, which
Yep.
was
So
crazy.
yeah, but if there was going to be a guy, I mean, Willie Mays probably was like, yes, that's the guy I want. That's the guy I want. Speaking of which, we haven't had an episode since then.
Yeah.
RP Willie Mays, obviously a great baseball player, did more for the game than me and you even know about because we're under our 20s. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we can't say enough about the guy. But the Astros, on the other hand, another team we've talked about kind of dropping the ball a little bit this year with the new manager, rookie manager. But how are they doing now, Micah?
Well, they're really starting to heat up. They've really kind of got it going. A lot of the problems this year have been on the pitching side. A lot of young pitchers, a lot of pitcher injuries, but they're currently 7-3 in their last 10, up to second place in this division, and only 6 games behind the Mariners. So if this lineup can really, I know the lineup's already been doing a lot of heavy lifting, but if they can keep doing what they're doing, and this team can find any semblance of pitching, I mean, it's still the same Astros core that's been pretty good the last however long, 7 years
Yeah.
now. So I think if this AL, I don't think the AL can afford to let the Astros get hot, really, especially in a down year in the AL West where it seems kind of
Yeah,
wide
the
open.
West.
If you let the Astros get hot, I think they win that division pretty easily. Although Max Scherzer back now for the Rangers, we'll see if that can make a difference. Who knows when Jacob DeGrom's going to be back, and then he'll start twice and get injured again. But just the Astros right now, they're definitely the hottest team in the AL West, which isn't saying a ton. It's like the hottest iceberg in the Antarctic, but it's something at least.
What works out well for the Astros right now is that they're in this AL West, which we've talked about probably more than any other division all year. Just who wants to win this division? It seems like no one wanted to take charge and actually win the division. And the Mariners still have a 6 game lead. So the Mariners are still playing 563 baseball. They're not
Yeah.
being terrible. I mean, they're 10 games over 500. People are sleeping on the Mariners. The Mariners are still that team in this division right now.
Oh
But
yeah, for sure. They just can't get
if you give
complacent by any means.
right, and we still have a few weeks to the All-Star break. So if you give the Astros that much time to play catch up, they may just do it, especially if the Mariners get complacent, like you said. And you mentioned Scherzer coming back. He's old, and at this point, he's kind of in the same boat as DeGrom. How many starts are you going to get from him before he's back on the
Yeah,
IL? And if he does go back on the IL, is he done? Is he
I would
good?
assume so. Yeah,
I mean, at this point, you'd have to. I mean, it's like, I mean, he's been on the IL pretty much his whole last 3 contracts. So if he goes on the IL here, you're kind of like, well, He's had a good run. He's good. He has to Steven
Yeah.
Strasburg.
The one bright spot for the Rangers, though, is my Rookie of the Year pick, Wyatt Langford, who hit his first over the fence home run and his first grand slam this week. Two separate home runs. Langford's getting hot. The umpires are finally starting to call a correct zone for him. He might have been the guy getting robbed by umpires the most this year, up
Yeah.
until recently when Ellie took that from him. But he's been not getting any calls all year, and you see it immediately. As soon as he starts to get a fair strike zone, the dude starts raking. So the talent is there, the bat is there, and that really is the only bright spot for the Rangers recently. But we'll see. Like you were talking about with this pitching, they're so fragile. You don't really know what you're going to get when they come back. But at least you know you're getting production out of your young guys right now, except Evan Carter, who's been bad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Do you think his luck changed when they kind of told off that one umpire? I'm sure you've seen the clip.
yeah, that was actually Mets catcher Francisco Alvarez that he was talking to in that clip, not the umpire, but I definitely
Oh,
it's changed around since then. Both of those homers have come since that happened. So I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe as soon
Turning
as
point.
Florida baseball got eliminated, the power just transferred to Wyatt Langford and he's
Yeah.
raking now. So
And Jack Caglione was like, I'm going to hang up my bat for the year. And Evan Carter's like, cool, I'll take it. Give me your batting gloves, man. Let's make this work.
or Wyatt Langford,
Um,
not Evan Carter.
yeah, Wyatt Langford. Both young guys who play the outfield for the Rangers. But yeah, I mean, Astros could definitely end up at the top of the division, and I wouldn't be shocked in this AL West. So just look out for the Astros down the line. And another teamer, kind of per player who's heating up. Well, I don't want to say heating up because he
He's
started off a
staying
little
hot.
slow. Yeah, he started off a little slow, but he's kind of been quietly just turned into one of the best baseball players all year. Like I know he's leading the first base votes for the NL All-Star, but no one's really talking or excited about it. Like the fans see it, but you don't see people going like they talk about Juan Soto or Mookie Betts and thinking of Hiro Ohtani. But Bryce Harper, man, I mean, just
Yeah.
absolutely crushing it right now.
Well, I think what's going on for him is what has aptly been named Bryce Harper syndrome, where a player gets maybe overrated so much at the start of their career that everyone is forever going to call them overrated, and they end up underrated as a result of that. And I think that's happened to Bryce Harper, especially the last 3 or 4 years. The guy has just been amazing, and even though there's obviously still the media coverage around him, I think there's so many people who are all the time going, well, Bryce Harper's overrated. Bryce Harper's overrated. That you're not acknowledging how good of a player this actually is. He's been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he's been outstanding this year. 981 OPS, a 304 average with 19 home runs. I think he's on pace for 38 home runs, which isn't great, but it's still way above average. And
Good.
really,
Yeah.
all he needs to do, especially on this Phillies team, that he's not the one making it happen. Like you've seen some teams, there's pretty much a guy who's making it happen, and with that guy at the lineup, they can't win. When he's struggling, he's only going to get help from Castellanos, Turner, Kyle Schwarber, all the guys he's got behind him, Real Muto. So, I mean, he could just kind of,
Alec
he doesn't
Bohm
have,
somehow.
right, he doesn't have to be the superstar to stand out. He can kind of just fit in with the crowd, be himself. And I think, honestly, that's why he's doing the best at first base. Because if he was on a team where he was the one guy, like Trout for the Angels, and he has to make a position change like that, there's a lot more pressure on him. But a lot of pressure
Yeah.
off on him. So I think the position of the team really helps this.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. And this Phillies team, as you say, it's built so strong around him. And then not even to mention the rotation that's been one of the top five in baseball pretty much all season. So I think you have a team that good around a guy, you can let him, as you say, kind of flourish into that star role. And speaking of stars, as you mentioned, we are closing in on the All-Star break. And looking at the MLB divisions here, what are a couple teams that stand out to you who are just counting down the days until they can get to that break?
I mean, I feel like I got to say it before it's too late or someone else says it. If you look at the Cubs, it's April 27th, the worst hitting team in baseball in almost every category. And with runners in scoring position, they are the worst in every category. It's been really weird to watch, really hard to watch. I mean, they were one of the best hitting teams in baseball, then the worst hitting team in baseball. I don't really see that happening a whole lot. They didn't have a lot of injuries, not on the offensive side. Their arms have been beaten and banged up all year, but they need the break, man. I mean, I don't think, and you even put in their hurt arms in the bullpen. They got so many bullpen guys down. No team needs a break like the Chicago Cubs right now. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Cubs fan. Any baseball fan looks at
Yeah.
their record and their offensive stats and how it just flipped. It's almost inexplainable at this point.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. They look kind of just listless right now, which I mean, I obviously don't like the Cubs, but I would love to see an actual. I was hoping for a five-way division race at some point, as long as the Brewers lose, honestly. But the Cubs are just so they look lost right now. Frankly, you'll get a great outing from a starter, then either you can't hit all game, or you do finally hit, and then the bullpen blows it. It just feels like the
Yeah.
team can never put a complete game together right now, and as far as teams needing the break, I would also want to lump my Reds in there just because of how injured the team is. Noelvi Marte is still suspended. TJ Friedel went back on the IL again today. We had to call up Levi Jordan, a career minor leaguer. So it's tough times. The bullpen is okay, but the bats have just been ice cold until today. We're putting six on the Pirates right now as we speak. But as far as teams across in the AL, I think one team that is really needing the break badly is a team that it might go a bit under the radar, but it's the Kansas City Royals. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They're really starting to fall out of this AL Central race with the Guardians and the Twins, and they look to be honestly in trouble right now.
Yeah, no, that was the team I was going to touch on too. They're a team that we've kind of talked about all year, saying they're going to be right there at the end. They're going to be hanging around. They're a young, fun team. Once they can figure everything out and meld everything together, they're going to be dangerous and they're going to be right there for that division. And with the AL West maybe heating up with a two horse race, you throw the Rangers in there maybe, but with the Astros and Mariners, there's not a guarantee for that wild card spot that we were talking about. So they're really going to have to. Now
Yeah,
they're a game and a half back the wild card, but if the Astros keep heating up, they're really going to have to fight extra hard just to make the playoffs at this point.
well, the Red Sox have gotten so hot too that it's put the Royals in even more trouble. The Red Sox are 8-2 in their last 10, and you talk about teams that want to see the break. I think the Red Sox are like, no, let's keep playing baseball. They've been so
Yeah.
hot recently. Them and the Twins both are really playing excellent baseball right now. I would say the three teams who probably want to see the break the least are those two, and then the Braves, who have finally figured out how to hit a baseball again. But just it feels kind of weird. It feels like a lot of the teams at the top of these divisions that we've seen all year really starting to struggle. You look Yankees 3-7 in their last 10, Mariners 5-5, Phillies 5-5, Dodgers 6-4, Brewers 5-5. A lot of these teams at the top just look like they're kind of coasting or stumbling into the break right now.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly been an interesting year when it comes to baseball in general. I think pitching has just been ahead of the bats, if you will. So we may see the opposite. We may get the break, and then we come out of the All Star break, and you have all these fresh arms, and then it kind of resets your season, and then batting averages go down for a little bit because, I mean, fresh arms are either a really good thing or a really bad thing, depending on the pitcher. And if it's a pitcher where they're a really bad thing, you can rest assured during the All Star break, they're going to be getting some live ABs in, they're going to be doing their work.
Yeah,
So, I mean, who knows? And speaking of pitching, Paul Skeens had another gem. I mean,
yeah.
he's the real deal. I mean, there's a lot of guys that we are super excited about when they come up and they just kind of are flatlined. This guy hasn't missed a beat, man. I mean, not at all.
He's been great for sure. I am notoriously for anyone that knows me, they'll know I'm notoriously slow to come around on pitchers in the big leagues. I usually want to wait and see what they can get out of a full season, see like how they go through struggles, how they go through arm fatigue. I want to see if batters can start taking Skeens' splinker, and then if they start taking that, what where he kind of goes from there. Because you can't throw that fastball every pitch, even if it is at 100. Because eventually, major league hitters are going to get to that if they know
Yeah,
that's the
they're good.
only
Yeah.
pitch you're going to rest on. So I want to see how he kind of handles a full season of batters adapting to him. But so far, I definitely think he's looked amazing.
No, I'm with you. I love waiting on pitchers because they're. I mean, Shota Imanaga is a good example.
Yeah,
Best pitcher of baseball for 2 months, we'll say, and then he's starting to get hit around now. So that's the thing. Like,
it's Angel Reese's fault. Like it's Angel Reese's fault entirely since that
yeah,
photo.
yeah. He had a sub one ERA. Met
Yeah.
Angel Reese. His ERA is now since then is like just under 8, so a little bit of a jump. Um, but is it a matter of teams have more film on him, or the Mets were the first team he ever faced twice in his
Yeah.
major league career, and they lit him up the second time. So it'll be interesting to see next time he faces a team for the second time what exactly happens. But Paul Skeens, I hope the best for him. And is this what we're seeing because of the realm of college baseball now and just how competitive and good D1 college baseball has gotten that they're just on
Well,
par?
not even just D1 college baseball, but I've seen a lot of people talking about that honestly the the competitive level of baseball in the SEC is not dissimilar from low A. If you're talking about just the talent in those leagues, which might sound ridiculous to say, but you look at these premier players in the SEC that come out. Wyatt Langford is already a contributor for the Texas Rangers. Paul Skeens is already in the rotation for the Pirates. Those are two guys from just this past draft class that were
Right.
SEC stars that are now very, very good MLB contributors. So I think there is something to be said for that, definitely. I would say it's interesting as you move more kind of out west and with different conferences. I'll be curious to see how Travis Bazana does because he's a guy that's supposed to be another almost instantly ready MLB hitter. But coming out of Oregon State, once he got into that postseason environment, he went 0 for versus Kentucky in a super regional, really struggled. So I'll be curious to see if he can adapt. But I definitely agree. I think the level of college baseball has gotten so high that a lot of these guys can make this jump quicker than ever before.
Yeah, and I think when you see the SEC compared to the old Pac-12 or the Big Ten, is I think the SEC prepares you for that environment and that atmosphere you're going to be thrown into at a major league stadium because they just take it more serious in the SEC. Fans take it more serious. The games are more serious. There's more people. There's more mutiny in the stands. There's more hatred if you mess up. There's more everything, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, and we can attest this. We go to SEC school and we've traveled to SEC schools and seen baseball and football games. So I just think that it kind of mentally prepares them for what's going to go on when they get to a pro fan base in a pro stadium.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But I'll be curious to see how these guys, like we've talked about, finish out the season. Skeens especially, because the one
Yeah.
thing that is different between him and Imanaga obviously more of that control artist type guy. Skeens is more of an overwhelming stuff type guy. So I'll be curious to see if that maybe changes how teams adapt to each of them. But we'll definitely have to see. But unless there's anything else, I think that's it for the MLB this week.
Oh, so I got time to move on to motorsports.
Yes, and Loudon, which what an interesting weekend it was up in Loudon, New
Yes.
Hampshire. And I just want to start by saying that GTE picks are so hot right now as this
2 for
week
2.
mine came in. And I'm going to be campaigning for double points here since Christopher Bell won both races. Can I get double points?
I don't. We don't pick for the Xfinity race now. We don't pick for
Okay,
the Xfinity
fine.
race now. But
Fine.
man, yeah. I mean, he swept the weekend with there not being a truck race. But I mean, just an interesting. Even just you take the Xfinity race out of it and you just do Sunday. I mean, it was like we watched 3 different races almost, and then I took a
Yeah.
nap in between the 3 races when they because I thought it was gonna be called 100%.
Yeah, me too.
I thought, and I saw some YouTubers and guys I follow who do podcasts. There's one guy who posted his race review like 5 minutes before they called it. He had to go back and edit the thumbnail, and it was him with a thumbs up, and it was like, this is all completely wrong and outdated now. So go watch the race. So
Nice.
I mean, we all kind of thought, especially after the Coke 600, when you're like, oh, that could definitely race again.
The duality
called
of
that.
Christopher Bell wins.
Yeah. So I mean, just what a race. Before we get any further, we'll rate the burnout. Christopher Bell won on wet tires, burnout on wet tires on a slightly wet, dry track. What you got?
Well, it's a 10 for me because it's the first ever burnout on wet weather tires, and therefore it is a momentous occasion in history, and therefore it's a 10.
Wow, that's so weird from you because you're always the guy who hates everything. Yeah, you're gonna give it a 10 just because it's a new shiny pretty toy.
I am.
I'm not. I was like 7 or 8. I'll go 8 just because it was wet, so you got to like spin a little more, I guess. But I'm gonna go 8. I think that's a good, solid, non-biased.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
take on
definitely
the
is. And speaking of the number 8, let's move into the weekly segment called Kyle Busch Can't Catch a Break. As this
I feel
week,
so bad
the
for that
car was a 30th place car that wrecked about 8 times and then broke down.
Yeah,
What do you say? What do you say at this point?
Well, if you're the fans in New Hampshire, you cheer and go, "Yeah, I'm a truck redneck. The 8's fun. Kyle Busch, yeah." But dude, I was one of those fans at one point, and sometimes I may still be, but I can't. It hurt my soul to hear those fans boo Kyle Busch
Yeah.
wreck on this fourth time. It sucks, man. It really does.
It's so bad, and RCR is just a dumpster fire right now. It's so bad. I would not be surprised to see this Cup program go the way of SHR, where they kind of hang on to their Xfinity program and nuke the Cup project, especially once Austin Dillon decides he's done going out and running 35th to waste money. I just Kyle Busch has got to get out of there, and I know he's not going to be able to come back to JGR because Christopher Bell told us so. But the fact that he is just stuck in that 20 to 30th place car every week, and then the fact when he does have speed, something goes horribly wrong. I just feel so bad for him, which
Yeah.
is not a position I thought I would ever find myself in, but here we are.
Maybe Kyle changed his name to Chase, and maybe he's the Chase.
Yeah,
Christopher
Chase
Bell
Busch.
speaks of. Yeah, Chase Bush. But yeah, I mean it's sad at this point, and it does suck, especially for Kyle Busch more than RCR, just because a lot of it is RCR's fault sometimes. But sometimes it's not. It's just been weird. So I mean, does this fast track his retirement if he keeps having weekends like this? Because he's
It
not enjoying
might,
his time.
honestly, because if there's no opening for him to go somewhere, because honestly, if you're Hendrick Motorsports, because that looks like that's where the one opening would be for him to go. If you're Hendrick Motorsports, why do you get rid of any of those guys right now? Alex Bowman is running solid. Like, in my opinion, as a fourth car, there's no reason to get rid of Bowman right now. And then if you think Bowman might have a drop-off in performance, Carson Hocevar is right there. So why would you bring in like 35-year-old Kyle Busch when you get young Carson Hocevar in? So I think he's kind of just stuck in a bad spot.
And Hendrick's MO in the Cup Series has just been young. When we sign a driver, we want them young so we can have them. They did it with Chase Elliott, William Byron. Kyle Larson was kind of a wild card, and then Alex Bowman was also young. But yeah, and you said Bowman, and that just reminded me of what you said about Austin Dillon. That might have been a record for us. We went like 10 episodes or 8 episodes without trash talking Austin Dillon until today.
We did.
How hard was that for you?
It was very difficult, honestly. I went into each episode each week like, don't talk about Austin Dillon. Don't talk about Austin Dillon.
Yeah, we had a sign
comes back
put
around
behind
eventually.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
because we've been talking about Logan Sargent and Lance Stroll so much. Deflected
we've had some other guys take off the heat, but Austin Dillon's back in the hot seat. But yeah, I mean, it was, I don't know. But now we can talk about the good for Blount and just how the racing went. And two guys, both SHR, Briscoe and Berry, very impressed. Josh Berry has kind of been driving lights out the past few weeks.
You sent me a text midway through the race that said, Barry's figured this NASCAR thing out, and I would agree with that. He's been great. I think a lot of it is that we've had a run of kind of these flat, short tracks that really match his driving style. I'll be curious to see as we move kind of away from this back into more normal circuits if he'll still be at this level, but at least for the short tracks, he has been extremely impressive. Chase Briscoe also drove a great race. He was nowhere all day, and then they put the wet tires on, and he started driving basically on the grass every corner and just made up spot after spot after spot after spot, had great speed, and shows why a team like JGR, spoiler alert, is going to sign him. I mean, Christopher Bell told us, so there is no spoiler alert. But both of those drivers are great, and what it has me thinking is, if you're Noah Gragson right now, I think everyone knows that Ryan Preece is not getting a Cup ride next year. I think he's cooked, absolutely for sure, especially since they announced Cole Custer is going to take that Haas charter next year. But if you're Noah Gragson, you got to be feeling the pressure right now with how well Barry's driving. Knowing Briscoe's already locked up one of the open spots, it's got to be a lot of pressure on the 10 car right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. Noah Gragson's got to be he's got to find something, and he's shown spurts of it at some tracks, and then other tracks he just misses completely. So I think a lot of that is he's kind of pressing to, one, prove to people that he should be in the Cup Series, and now just even more so that he has to land a gig for next year. And who knows, maybe there's a chance we see him bounce back to Xfinity, and I'm sure Junior Motorsports will give him that opportunity. I think they still have a great relationship. But as far as the guys you're taking from SHR now, you're taking Barry and Briscoe, no doubt. And Briscoe, something that kind of ticked me off with, or not ticked me off, but like I think worked with the wet weather tires was he's the guy who won Bristol Dirt a few years ago. And it seems like they talked about this on the broadcast a little bit, but they're kind of like on the fence about, is it the dirt experience that's making these guys better? And some guys were like, yeah, the dirt guys, it's a mentality, blah, 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 blah. I just think driving on dirt in general, it's slicker. You can't gas it up as much as you can. And we saw that with LaJoy, and Michael McDowell when they gassed it up into turn one on the inside. Their car spun
Yeah.
around. I think
Yep.
it was 100% dirt experience because you have to feather it. You have to really work with the car to get it to do and turn where you want it to. And we saw that. Bell won. Larson ran well. They all
Yeah.
ran well.
They mentioned on the broadcast too, talking about how not even necessarily just a dirt surface, but that experience of knowing how to search for grip and find lines. And as you said, guys who aren't familiar with that could not handle it. Corey LaJoy spun out like 3 times. Michael McDowell did his best Tyler Reddick at Darlington impression on Ryan Blaney going into turn one there. Felt really bad for Blaney on that. And just these other guys really were impressive. And Christopher Bell, I know we talked about the fact that he won the race, but I don't think it's really recognized just how dominant he was in this race. Was absolutely exceptional the entire way. The only time he really ever got shuffled back was when pit strategy kind of swung the opposite direction from him. But anytime he was out front, he was the fastest car on the track today or this weekend. So I was really impressed by that as far as Bell and JGR, especially in a weekend where JGR was not necessarily as bulletproof as they usually are here. Hamlin had periods up at the front, but kind of yo-yo. Truex looked really fast at the beginning, but then his crew ate a sandwich instead of changing the left side tires, and he got shuffled all the way back to the back and then spun out. Somehow still ended up top 10. Ty Gibbs, maybe the most anonymous race I've ever seen from him. I don't think I heard him mentioned once, but just Christopher Bell's ability to capitalize on good equipment this weekend, I was really impressed by it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going back to last year, really. I mean, not last year, last week, when we saw him kind of drive through the field, and he just kind of continued that. And going into it, I knew he would be a good pick.
How about 7 of 11 wins at Loudon as well for him? It's 11 National Series starts at Loudon across Cup, Xfinity, and trucks, and he's won 7 of them. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, that's unheard of almost nowadays. I mean, that's like Jimmy Johnson at some of his tracks back in the day, Miami being one of them, of course. But I mean, it is really impressive, and I think whoever gets to our little Google Doc first or text each other first, I think we know who we're picking for New Hampshire next year.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, it's very impressive. But how did you like the wet weather racing, what we saw? And do you think it was a win for NASCAR a good year?
Okay, so I think wet weather racing overall is always going to be a win for NASCAR, especially the racing it created. Everyone's searching everywhere. You had 5 wide at Loudon, which was absurd. But the one thing I have a problem with is NASCAR's refusal to let the teams decide on their own when to switch to wets and then when to switch back to slicks. That's one thing that as an F1 fan I love about F1. There's jeopardy of tire choice, and you can go out there and try to guess early and go on to slicks early and gain a bunch of time. I realize that at a bank track there are risks involved that there are not at a road course. But also, Loudon is barely a bank track. Yeah, Loudon is barely a bank track. So I think eventually, if you want to say you're committed to making wet weather racing happen at ovals, first off, bring a windshield wiper. Oh my goodness. The fact that we can't race in sprinkling rain because we don't have a windshield. If you're going to bring wet tires, bring a windshield wiper, first of all. Then also, if you're committed to wet weather racing, let them go wet weather racing. Don't dictate, okay, you can't change tires here. You maybe can change tires here. Nah, we've changed our mind. You can change tires.
Yeah, that was the one thing.
It took drivers saying, our tires are falling apart for NASCAR to go, maybe we should let them change tires. And then some were like, can we go to slicks? NASCAR, no. They're professional race teams. Let them figure it out. If they mess up, it's on them. So I love that NASCAR was committed to go back racing. I was very happy with that, but at some point you got to let the teams make their call on this, or it's going to feel like NASCAR's dictating and manipulating the end of these races.
No, NASCAR wouldn't do that.
Yeah, never.
Something oddly enough that this was very shocking to me because NASCAR regulates everything. Guess what's not regulated in the wet weather for these teams?
What?
Their defogger. They can run whatever defogger they want, really. I mean,
out of all things, that's not regulated.
Yeah, somebody is going to figure a way to put a defogger in the car that gives you 4 horsepower. I mean, they're going to figure it out. This is NASCAR. I mean, if you just read the rule book of rules that are in there from stuff these redneck engineers have figured out.
They're like make a defogger turbo or something.
Yeah. It's like, why does your defogger look like a turbocharger. What? No, that's just the fan. Why does it sound like that? Ah, don't worry about it. But
They're gonna
that would
put a
be pretty
Dodge
funny.
Hellcat supercharger in and call it a defogger.
It's gonna have a sticker on it, like a Scat Pack
Yeah,
sticker with the red eye. Or
guys, it's a
oh
defogger. I
yeah, no, we
promise.
should. Someone hire us. We know what we're doing. Okay,
Yeah,
we
definitely.
know exactly what we're doing when it comes to defoggers. Defoggers only. Um,
Yes.
and they're not regulated, so you won't get in trouble
GT
if we do something
defoggers.
wrong. Defoggers. That's pretty good. That was good. Oh, that was good.
Thank you.
But Nashville's coming up. Music City. So I mean, I think everyone knows who one of us is going to pick, and the only reason we both didn't pick it is because that's just a bad idea, and we like parody anyways. I don't think we picked the same driver
Yeah.
once.
No.
But tell us who you got away with going with, Micah.
Well, I got to him first because I texted you first, and it is Chase Elliott, driver of the number 9 car. And you wanted him, and I pointed out that if we both picked him, it would probably curse him. So it's Chase Elliott for just me this week. Chevrolet, especially Hendrick, has owned Nashville with Elliott and Larson winning 2 of the races here. The other won by Ross Chastain, also in a Chevy. So it's going to be a bow tie for sure this week. I think it's Chase Elliott. I think he's been running too well not to win another race here, and Hendrick is, it just feels like they are built for this track. They're so good here so consistently. And I think this is finally the week where, as you talked about a couple weeks ago, Chase Elliott always seems to have a good car, but never necessarily the fastest car. I think Alan Gustafson brings the fastest car this weekend. I think Chase Elliott wins.
I'm not even so sure that they have the fastest car. I just think he's going to put himself in a position, especially Chase Elliott's a smart driver. He's going to know really
Yeah.
quickly if he has the fastest car or not. And what that's going to allow him to do is put himself and Alan Gustafson into positions that put him in the right spot in the end. Someone who will always have a fast car, they always do. I'm going with.
Ellie! Oh, that's nuked!
Did he
Oh,
backflip
that's
it?
killed.
Did he
I don't
backflip
know.
it?
I haven't seen the video, but that was obliterated. Holy cow!
Nice.
That went to like the
Nice.
top of the boat in center field. 439, 112 off the bat.
I,
Okay. Anyway, it's now
I'm going.
it's now 11-3 Reds. I'm
And
so
you still
happy.
care about this game? No, I just to be watching too. Yeah, that was the contest to be watching. I'm going with Kyle Larson, another guy who has a win here. The only win at Nashville that hasn't come from a Hendrick car, it's been another Chevy of Ross Chastain. So Chevy's dominant here. I was between Byron and Larson, but honestly, Byron has been unimpressive
He was
the last
bad
few
this past
weeks.
weekend.
Yeah, compared to what he's been the past 2.5, 3 years, his last 3 weeks have just kind of been lackluster for me, and he's kind of falling into what Elliott was last year, when he was racing and when it was healthy. So not terrible, but not where you want to be with that car and that team, and he knows
Yeah.
that, and he'll bounce back. But I
Over the
just couldn't
past
go with
month, yeah, over the past month, you have to admit Bowman has been better than Byron, which is weird to say, but
right.
over the past month, it's been true.
So I wanted to pick a Chevy. Ross Chastain, haven't seen it from him this year. He's had some dud moves this year as well.
Yeah.
But I'm going with Larson. I just think it's a safe pick. But I mean, it's a pick you can't go wrong with, really. I mean, he's always up there. He's going to be at the front at some point. He's got to win here, and his win was dominant here. I think he led
Yeah.
like 250 to 300 laps.
Uh-huh.
So yeah,
Also, if I'm not wrong, I think every time that one of us has picked Larson this year, he's won. You in Vegas and me at Kansas.
yeah. Both his wins we've picked. We've nailed his tracks, which is shocking. We haven't picked him more, to be honest. He's the
Yeah.
best NASCAR, best driver in the world, is what a lot of people say, and I don't disagree 100%. But it is weird that we've only picked him twice,
Yeah.
which is interesting. But
Well,
hey,
we'll see. We'll see if he does it
we have
again.
we have F1 for that, where we just pick Verstappen every week, and that gets boring
You pick
sometimes.
Verstappen every week, and that's how you're going to win the predictions because you just pick Verstappen every week, and I try to be different, and then they lose. But
Hey,
speaking of
I was
F1,
I was going to pick someone else this week, but you picked him, so we'll get to that.
okay, yeah, I thought I was kind of surprised you didn't pick him here too. Okay, so we'll just jump right into it, and let's first talk about Spain. It was Spain. Spain is always kind of like a mid race. That's what it delivered again. Although the start from George Russell might be one of the best starts I have ever seen. From fourth on the grid to take the lead into turn one, the Mercedes wasn't fast enough to win, and he lost it pretty soon after. But amazing start from Russell, and another bad start from Lando Norris, who a lot of people are saying McLaren sabotaged him with the strategy. McLaren nuked the race for him. No, he lost the race because he didn't get a good start. And then Verstappen was just faster the rest of the way. So I think Norris has lost the race there, honestly. McLaren had the fastest car, I would say, but Verstappen is the fastest driver. And the driver made a difference this weekend. Max Verstappen is just, he's
100%.
amazing. He's
Yeah.
he doesn't have off days. I know I feel like I say it every week, but the guy doesn't have off days. He's an absolutely bulletproof driver most of the time and picked up another win in Spain. And I I picked Charles Leclerc this past weekend. I had Sainz on the podium, and neither one of them even made the podium. And then they fought after the race. There were some words let slip in interviews that I don't think Ferrari as a corporate entity will be too happy about, with Charles saying that Carlos is maybe desperate to make something happen with the point his career's in and it being his home race. Carlos saying that Charles complains too much after every race, and a little bit of trouble in paradise here at Ferrari. The last 2 weeks, the team has not been good. Then, honestly, I know you're a Carlos Sainz fan, but that is objectively a penalty. The move he made on Leclerc, he
Yeah.
went off track to overtake Leclerc. I don't know how he didn't get a penalty for it, but maybe home race FIA was just like, I didn't see anything. But
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
obviously, I mean, these guys have just raced a really long race. They get out of the car. They're going to say exactly what pops into mind when it happens. They don't have a filter after this. You see this in all motorsports, not just F1 or NASCAR. But Leclerc, justifiably upset with Sainz, and they seem obviously we don't know what really goes on, especially now. But in the past few years, months, weeks, they've seemed like they're a pretty good
Yeah, they seem
kind of
like good friends
thing
off the
going.
track.
So I'm sure they're going to work it out and they'll be fine. And I'm sure Leclerc understands, like, hey, this guy doesn't have the seat next year, so maybe I'll cut him some slack, whatever. Because if I was in his position, I'd probably be doing some similar stuff, just to prove myself.
Well, I think they'll all get over this fairly soon. These guys have had a good relationship off the track for pretty much their entire time at Ferrari. It's just one race where I think it might have not been great between either of them, with the extra
Yeah,
pressure on Sainz right now, and then Leclerc feeling frustrated after a horrific Canadian GP a couple weeks before. But we'll see what happens with moving forward with those two. Then the fight at the top really has gotten really good in F1. I would say it's Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes all fighting for the top, but we'll say it's Verstappen, McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes, because Perez
yeah,
cannot be bothered to race competitively right now. And there's not anything to say. He's just bad. It's every week he's bad, and
yeah,
Red Bull's not going to do anything, so we don't even have to talk about that. But I've really enjoyed that the unpredictability in a season that we thought would be just kind of nailed on Red Bull the whole way. Even though Verstappen's winning a lot, there's good qualifying battles. There's good back and forth in the races. There's really entertaining battling, which is something I did not expect for this season. And moving forward into next season as well, with the regulation change not happening until after next season, I'm super excited for what we might see in 2025 with Lewis Hamilton joining Ferrari. That's going to be an exciting pairing, and just the parity
yeah.
we're seeing right now, I don't think was expected at all to start the season. I've been really encouraged by it.
Yeah, I'm super happy with what I'm seeing from Norris, and I know the fan base as a whole is. It's just he's really fun to watch. It's a driver that we've known to have the talent for a while, and he's finally getting the opportunity and the equipment to run toe to toe with the big dogs of the sport. And obviously, the fans are loving it. So it's a win for F1. It's a win for McLaren. I mean, it is really fun to watch. And now, I mean, Mercedes has kind of just come out of the blue too,
Yeah,
and saying like, hey, we've had 2 races where we've been there. Look out for us too. And Lewis Hamilton, if you give him a car that's on par with Red Bull and McLaren, you know you're gonna have to look out for Lewis Hamilton. I
yeah.
mean,
You
it's just
saw
inevitable.
as soon as their car got good last week, he had a pretty, it was an okay finish, and then he after the race said it was maybe the worst race of his career. So then to come back the next week, the car's getting better. He's immediately on the podium. It's very encouraging to see. And as we move into Austria, this is a track that usually produces good racing on its own, and I know that usually I'm picking someone different, and I've done it again, but I feel like I actually have good reasoning this time instead of just upgrading the left lug nut as you said last week. But this is a track that Lando Norris has always gone well at. It's where he got his first podium. This is where the whole last lap Lando thing started here for an Austrian Grand Prix. The dude just loves this track. He absolutely flies around it. I
Yeah.
think the McLaren will be very good here, and I think Norris wins this race. I think Verstappen finishes second just because even if the Red Bull isn't the first or even the second fastest car, I think he still is going to be in with a chance every week. And then I have Leclerc in third just because I think this track suits Ferrari more than Mercedes. I think Oscar Piastri is still a bit too rough on his tires to finish on the podium at a race like this. Austria being a power circuit really lends itself to the stronger engine. I think that is Ferrari, and Leclerc has also gone well here. Won here in 2022, so I think he fills out the podium with the last spot.
Yeah, I like the Norris pick in first a lot, and I just didn't go with it because I didn't want to be the same as you. And you still can't forget about Verstappen, obviously. So I have Verstappen in the one spot, Norris in the two spot, all the same reasons you said. And then I have Russell in my third spot just because I like the grooviness of this team. I like the vibe they're giving me recently, and I think it's going to take one more race of Ferrari not getting it together for them to say, oh, we really aren't getting it together right now, before they kind of kick it into gear and come out and dominate a race like we saw them do at the beginning of the year. So I think it's going to take one more slip up of Ferrari before they kind of go, oh, we're actually in trouble here in the Constructors' Championship. So I think Ferrari's going to have another off weekend for what we expect from Ferrari.
Yeah, if Ferrari can't figure it out this weekend, I definitely could see a world where Russell finishes third because he's been good at capitalizing this year. Apart from Canada, where I think he should have won the race, he's been very opportunistic. So I could definitely see a world where that happens. I don't hate that at all. But we'll have to see. And there's also rain forecasted for a lot of this weekend in Austria. So if rain happens, you never know what's going to happen. And
That's right.
we had a great wet qualifying there in 2020. Lewis Hamilton with one of the best laps I've ever seen in the rain there. But I'm super excited. Second week of a triple header. Then after Austria, we'll head to Britain, where it's always a fun crowd over there. The British fans always know how to show out. But I think that is it for F1. There was not a lot of off-track drama to talk about this weekend, which is a little surprising. But so I think it's mostly just the on-track news. Yeah, it'll come for sure.
Yeah. But no, definitely a good break, especially when it's a bunch of grown men driving race cars that were acting like it's the Real Housewives of Europe and Scandinavia. But yeah, but that's all we got.